Imagine walking down any street in your city main street, Kings Avenue, Elm Road. You likely never pause to wonder why it's called that. Street names seem ordinary, almost invisible, yet they carry secrets, stories, and histories that stretch back centuries. The streets you navigate every day are more than lines on a map. They are reflections of power, culture, local quirks, and the shifting priorities of societies over time. The history of street names is far stranger and more fascinating than most people realize. It's filled with unexpected origins, scandals, and sometimes downright absurd inspirations. The concept of naming streets is as old as cities themselves. In ancient Mesopotamia, some of the first urban centers used simple descriptors for streets: the road by the market or the street of the temple. These names were functional, designed to help residents and visitors navigate sprawling cities without maps. Names were a practical tool, not a matter of pride or politics, and they reflected daily life. The ancient Egyptians took a similar approach, using descriptive names for pathways in their settlements. Streets and alleys were identified by their function or the buildings that lined them, whether it was a craftsman's workshop or a storage area for grain. As civilizations evolved, street names began to reflect social hierarchy and political authority. In ancient Rome, streets were often named after prominent families, magistrates, or local landmarks. The famous Via Appia, one of Rome's earliest and most important roads, was named after the Roman censor Appius Claudius Caecus, who commissioned its construction in 312 BCE. Roman streets were a way to immortalize power. Walking along a street named after a senator or emperor was a subtle reminder of the ruling elite's presence. By embedding their names into the urban fabric, rulers ensured that generations of citizens would literally move through their legacy. In medieval Europe, street names became more colorful and varied. Markets, trades, and professions heavily influenced urban nomenclature. Streets were named for the goods sold there, like Baker Street or Butcher Lane, or for the crafts practiced along their length, such as Goldsmith Alley. These names served as early advertising and practical guidance for residents and travelers, reflecting both the economic life of the city and its social organization. Some streets were even named for notorious criminals or infamous events, ensuring that cautionary tales were remembered for centuries. Religious influence also shaped street names. Many European cities have streets named after saints, churches, or religious festivals. In London, for example, St. Martin's Lane points to a church, while Holywell Street recalls a sacred spring. These names were more than markers. They were symbolic, reflecting the central role of faith in shaping community, identity, and memory. In some cases, street names were deliberately changed to assert religious authority or celebrate political shifts, turning urban cartography into a tool for cultural messaging. Colonialism added yet another layer of intrigue across the Americas, Asia, and Africa. Colonizers imposed street names that reflected their own heritage, heroes, and monarchs, often erasing or overshadowing local traditions. In New York City, streets like Broadway and Wall Street carry both Dutch and English legacies, showing the layers of power, commerce, and conquest embedded in a simple street name. Sometimes, indigenous names persisted, offering a fascinating glimpse into the pre-colonial past, while in other cases, names were rewritten to assert dominance or cultural supremacy. Even seemingly mundane streets can have bizarre or whimsical origins. In Paris, streets like Rue de la Hachette or Rue des Bars have etymologies lost in the centuries, sometimes reflecting local dialects, forgotten trades, or even jokes. Across the world, streets named after animals, vegetables, or fantastical creatures reveal the human desire to encode humor, identity, or local stories into the urban grid. A street name isn't just a label, it's a tiny artifact of collective memory, a coded message from the past to anyone willing to notice. The industrial era brought additional changes. Rapid urbanization and city planning required systematic naming schemes. Cities needed numbered streets, grids, and logical sequences to manage postal delivery, transportation, and governance. In Manhattan, for instance, streets were systematically numbered in the early 19th century to facilitate growth and navigation. But even within these grids, personal and historical names were preserved, creating a hybrid system where utility and tradition coexist. Numbered streets made cities navigable, but named streets preserved identity and heritage. Political shifts often led to deliberate renaming of streets, sometimes sparking controversy. after revolutions, regime changes, or independence movements. Streets were renamed to honor heroes, martyrs, or ideological victories. In post-revolutionary France, for example, many streets that had once commemorated royalty were rechristened to celebrate Republican ideals. In modern times, this practice continues, reflecting the ongoing power struggle between memory, identity, and authority. A street is never just a street. It's a canvas on which societies inscribe values and power structures. Street names also reveal social biases and cultural attitudes. Historically, few streets were named after women, even though women shaped urban life in countless ways. Names often favored rulers, military figures, and wealthy landowners, reinforcing societal hierarchies. Today, movements to rename streets aim to correct these biases, honoring underrepresented communities and reclaiming spaces long dominated by patriarchal or colonial narratives. The act of naming a street is inherently political, capable of celebrating or erasing histories depending on who holds the pen. Technology, too, has left its mark on urban nomenclature. In the 20th and 21st centuries, streets were named after inventors, technological breakthroughs, and corporate entities, reflecting the increasing influence of innovation and commerce on daily life. Silicon Valley streets, for instance, honor pioneers of computing and electronics, embedding the story of modern technology directly into the urban landscape. Even seemingly ordinary street names in contemporary cities can be traced to profound societal shifts, commemorating discoveries, inventions, and cultural milestones. Across the globe, cultural quirks and local traditions have produced streets with names that defy logic or expectation. Some streets bear the names of foods, mythical creatures, or historical oddities. Others commemorate bizarre events or eccentric personalities. Each name is a story, a puzzle, a trace of human imagination frozen in asphalt or cobblestones. Walking these streets is like moving through a living museum, where every turn invites curiosity and discovery. Even the act of renaming streets today is a fascinating process. Municipalities balance tradition, practicality, and political sensitivity, sometimes sparking fierce debate among residents. Should a street be preserved for historical continuity or changed to reflect modern values? These questions show that streets are more than practical infrastructure. They are living documents of culture, memory, and identity, constantly evolving as societies evolve. Right. The next time you navigate your neighborhood or travel through a city, take a moment to notice the street signs. Behind each name lies a story, a reflection of power, culture, humor, tragedy, or ingenuity. Streets connect us physically, but they also connect us temporally, bridging the past and present in ways we rarely appreciate. Urban navigation is not just about getting from point A to point B, it's about reading history, decoding culture, and understanding the human impulse to label and organize the world around us. Street names are small, everyday objects that reveal vast hidden histories. From functional descriptors in ancient Mesopotamia to symbolic commemorations in Europe, from whimsical local quirks to deliberate political statements, the evolution of street naming shows how humans communicate identity, memory, and power through the most ordinary parts of our environment. They are maps, lessons, and stories, all at once. So next time you walk down a familiar street, pause and consider, who named it, why, and what stories have been embedded into its name over the centuries. Every street is a chapter in the ongoing narrative of human civilization, waiting to be read by anyone curious enough to notice.